Hello, this is Ramirez with Tidewater Renaissance Fighting Arts, and today I have a Harnischfechten video, and I want to talk about something that I had talked about on some of the Facebook groups, but you can't get the correct analogy with just pictures and text, so I thought a video would be a little bit better, a little more useful. And I'm going to talk about visors, because historically helmets are largely the part that goes everywhere except your face. Now, some earlier designs, Sugarloafs, had the whole face covered, but a lot of later period ones like the Bassinet and Armet, others have visors or face plates that cover the face. Now, in modern times, when we're doing Harnischfechten, if we want to represent something that has no face covering, but we still, for safety's sake, have to have face covering, we'll have something called a pierced plate visor. Looks like this. Basically, in most tournaments, this does not count as armor. It does protect you, but it doesn't count as armor. Now, for safety's sake, there have been a lot of modifications of visors. In other words, visors have to have some type of locking mechanism. Historically, these would have a hinge and they would just hang, and you could lift them up and drop them down as you needed air or better visibility. But nowadays, we have a strap system that goes around the helmet to make sure it locks in place. And that is a safety feature and one I'm very thankful for in modern day historical combat. That said, the fact that this does not count as actual armor is a little bit of a bummer, because this is highly protective. Now, conversely, and on my own helmet, I have a much more historical visor and faceplate. Now, you'll notice that there are no pierced plate in the actual oculars of this visor. Now, this became particularly relevant because the next passage of arms I'm going to absolutely, hands down, requires pierced plate. Also, if you're doing the SCA Harnischfechten experiment, pierced plate is absolutely required. Now, some people will weld in pierced plate in these oculars to make sure that they are compliant with those rules. But there's kind of a balance between what is historically accurate and what are we doing to play for safety, and why does any of this matter? And in theory it shouldn't, because most of our gear or weapons are designed not to fit through a certain type of eye slot. There's a certain size requirement, and this does fit those designations. And I also want to talk a little bit about why not all visors and not all oculars, the way we see out of helmets, are created equal. You'll notice these oculars, if I turn this on an angle, have kind of an almost pyramidal protrusion coming out, as well as them being narrow, and you'll notice that they're at an angle. They're not just a straight cut across. I get questions from people asking me about what kind of helmets I can use or not use, and they'll find cheap ones where either the eye slot is too big, that pyramidal ocular shape is either not there, or it is way too big. And others where there's no protrusion anywhere, it's just flat, and then there's just a slot for the eyes. And these are all potentially very, very dangerous. And people say, well, Ramirez, why? I'm going to give you a couple of examples, and they really come down to daggers and spears. So this is a spearhead. I have a rubber tip on it, and even underneath that rubber tip, there's a fairly wide bulbous end on this. And that bulbous end could not get through an ocular. So if we put this here, that can't go through, and even if this rubber tip broke, like the rubber broke, the metal bulb on the inside also would not fit through this ocular. Obviously, there's no issue if I have a pierced plate. It's definitely not getting through there. The problem comes in if, while sparring, and this is an identical one to the one I'm going to show you, What happens if a spear tip breaks? So this is the same one, however, it broke on installation, and my club, we used to use this as the one of the options. This brand, we no longer use it because if this can fail that easily during installation, we don't want to use it in sparring. But this is now a flat, wide point. Now, once again, against anything with pierced plate, not an issue. However, if this came at just the right angle through the slot, so once again, I just put that on the edge, goes right through. Now you might ask, well, Ramirez, if this was always a problem, why would we ever even have this? And the truth of the matter is the odds on being flat, straight through, and in are relatively minimal. And even continue to fight with a broken weapon. That someone wouldn't catch, the tip went, once again, minimal. Also, in gladiatory and other manuals that teach us, usually strikes either come upwards or they come downwards. And if they did, the odds are it would hit on the edge there or going up, where even if it was, it would take a very, very lucky shot to get that to go in. Not impossible, but it's a risk you would take with this. Now, let's say it didn't have these protrusions coming out. If it didn't, the odds on it entering the mask actually become a lot greater. If the eye slot is too wide. So in this case, right now, I'll try to turn this to the camera, you can see it. As I turn this, it would have to be a relatively sharp angle, pardon the pun, to get through there. If it's too wide, and even if it catches just one part of that, it's not really going through where it's designed to skate off, which is part of the beauty of armor. Now, with spears, maybe a little bit less of an issue because you're kind of coming up or coming down. I want to suggest a different possibility. This is a rondel dagger. This is from Darkwood Armory. It's fairly thin. It's fairly flexible. But that's not to say that someone couldn't theoretically grab it with their gauntlet and they might snap it. Now, I'm not going to test the possibility of snapping this. That's not the purpose of this channel. But I'm saying that it's theoretically possible that with enough play, enough experience, that you could, in theory, wear out the structural integrity at the tip of this and it could snap. If this snaps, it's not unlike the situation we just showed with this. Now, unlike working with a spear where usually you're attacking downwards or upwards, here you're usually attacking ice pick grip and you're going into someone's face. The likelihood of this going in is much more likely, and historically that's how you kill someone with armor, is you take a real rondel dagger and you do exactly that. You thrust into it and into the eye slot. So the reasoning of why we need pierced plate, why we need the oculars to be of a certain width, to make it protective, all that's important. I mean, as I said, that said, the tournament I'm going to requires pierced plate. As much as I don't like the fact that that means that I have to guard my face more, because this counts as proof against weapons. This doesn't in a tournament environment. So I don't know what the answer is in terms of things like the Dekoven Accord and the Lynx Accord and pierced plate. Maybe we should be treating this the same as this. Now, I get the arguments against it. You you can see a lot better out of this than this. But if our goal is safety, that's safer. Even though the other one is more historically accurate. I'm not saying definitely one way or the other what we as a community should do. But I wanted to point out that there is a valid reason for pierced plate. I know that I have some people who are on the more historical side who say, we really shouldn't have to need that if, like this, it fits the designations in the De Koven Accords as far as how big the slots on oculars can be. But stuff happens, and we all know that, and so it's possible something could break. If it didn't, this might be perfectly acceptable. In a perfect world, everyone's checking everyone's equipment, and we're all good. But we don't live in a perfect world. We don't live in a medieval world, but we certainly don't live in a perfect world. So that's why I brought up the safety potential issues, and once again that while it's highly unlikely if your kid and the kid of all the people who are working with you are properly inspected, this shouldn't be an issue. But it could be. And that's something that we all need to consider. And once again, that break happened on installation. Someone was kind of pounding on the other end to get it to fit, and boom, that just snapped. We can never be sure with our equipment that it's completely safe and that it's never going to break. So I wanted to bring this up. I wanted to kind of make an argument for pierced plate, though I also want to make a argument because I like this faceplate. And if it weren't for the fact I was training for a particular tournament where I have to use my pierced plate, I'd be using this one. I do think overall it's pretty safe. The way we do things in our club, we have multiple people spotting and watching our sparring. So the likelihood that we'd be allowed to continue if this happened is unlikely, but that is something that we need to consider. And so I thank you for taking the time to watch this video, or if you've liked or commented on the Facebook posts I've posted about it. Thank you for that, and stay safe, have fun, fight well. All right, see you in the next video.